Welcome back to another episode of WIM Speaks Radio. I am your host, DP Jeter, holding it down for the #1 sisterhood community in the world. That is Women in Media Global. Make sure you're checking out our website at womeninmediaglobal.org. Go ahead and drop your contact information at the bottom of the page so you can stay in the loop with all things WIM Global. Here on the WIM Speaks Show, we provide informative and inspiring episodes for you, bringing on guests to talk to women in media. Today's show is extremely important because yesterday felt like it was just like a really good Black day. You know, I felt really good about what happened with the verdict of the murder and manslaughter of George Floyd. And then to top it off with like that awesome verses last night with Redman and Method Man, it was just like, it was almost like we got a sigh of relief in that moment. And then we can go to a concert. And after doing all of the activities and things that I had to do yesterday, hosting 2 online events, I was able to catch up on the news and see everything that was going on. And I was really encouraged to look at the Black News Channel and see a lot of the covers that they had with people just across the country outside celebrating and just really happy about the guilty verdict when it came to the police officer murdering and manslaughtering George Floyd about a year ago. So today I'm excited to put back on my political analyst hat. I love being in this space. I don't get to do it nearly enough, but I have 2 amazing guests with me who I get to do this work with. I met both of these gentlemen on the political trail. We are all very passionate about getting the right Black people elected into office. And that work is what has connected me to Malik Boyd and David Cannady, who I would like to welcome onto the WIM Speaks Show, which is a very important and like exclusive invitation because, you know, this is a show for women. But when I was like, I got to put this show together, it has to be about the guilty verdict. And I was like, who are 2 brilliant minds that I can bring on? And I could, you know, be able to talk about the facts of this case and really to encourage the people of like, where do we go from this point? These 2 gentlemen popped right into my head. I hit them up and they were like, of course, Jeter. So welcome to the show, Malik and David. How are you?
I'm good. David, it's good to meet you, brother.
Hey, man, it's great to meet you as well.
Absolutely. We get to hang with the superstar Danielle Jeter, baddest in the business.
Jeter.
Yeah.
She got a new nickname. All right, out here.
It's, you know, it's the name. You know, it's the name. It's been around for many moons. Yeah. Many moons. But let's start the show off with some introductions. Malik Boyd is a political analyst. He's an author and producer, the host of the Heart City TV out of Philadelphia. And David Cannady is an attorney and also a former assistant district attorney in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So we have some very intelligent minds who could speak really well on what's going on. But go ahead and even share more about who you are with our guests, starting with Malik.
So I love what I do. Politics is one lane that I get to travel to try and make a change, but my focus is really making sure that we're building our community for the better and growing in various walks. So whether it's financial literacy, empowerment through education, political aptitude and understanding, the goal is making sure that no matter who's in that seat in 1600 Pennsylvania, we're winning every time. Every season, every election. So, yesterday was a major conversation to be had. We celebrated one moment and, there was a death, Ma'Khia Bryant, that same day. And so the work still needs to be done. As, one famous rapper said, the marathon continued. So here we are. I'm excited.
Absolutely. No, Malik, it's great to meet you. Thank you for inviting us, Jeter, onto the show. My name is David Cannady. As Danielle said, I'm former prosecutor in Broward County State Attorney's Office. I just left the office about a month ago after running for office, I ran for the seat because what we understand is to be politically engaged means that, and to affect change, you have to be politically engaged. You can't just sit on the sidelines and complain about the issue, but you need to be that change that you're looking for. Background, really long time ago, started in the DC, Virginia area. I'm not from down here, just like Jeter. We adopted South Florida, and as many people do, and we respect the area. Worked for Obama in 2008 for the campaign, worked in the White House, the U.S. Senate, went to law school at FSU Law School, and then came down to be a prosecutor and affect the change that I wanted to be. And now I left the state attorney's office, and I'm doing that in the private sector. So I'm doing that from the criminal defense side, but mainly from the corporate and the corporate side as well. So making money, because what we understand is that fundamentally we have to have economic change, which Malik was talking about, educate folks and build, but also political involvement as well. So stacking those levels on top of each other to ensure that we're making that progress.
Absolutely.
So here are the facts, ladies and gentlemen. The killing of George Floyd in May 2020 set off worldwide protests of the deadly and persuasive just Black Americans by police. Chauvin kneeled on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 26 seconds as he gasped for breath, saying, "I can't breathe." There were bystanders and children all around pleading for his help and his life. The entire incident was recorded on a smartphone by a young person on the scene. The prosecution argued that, as the attorney Jerry Blackwell put in his opening statement, Chauvin betrayed this badge when he used excessive and unreasonable force upon the body of George Floyd that put his knees upon his neck, his back, grinding and crushing him until life was squeezed out of him. The charges: Chauvin could face up to 40 years in prison for second-degree murder, up to 25 years for third-degree murder, and up to 10 years for manslaughter. So those are the facts. And I have some questions for our analyst and our attorney who's right here on the call with me. But what was your initial reaction when the guilty verdict was announced, and what were you doing at the time?
So, all right. So at the time that the verdict came in, I was actually in my office working with a client. I represent a client that's worth about $250 million. But what I told him was, when this verdict comes in, I'm taking a step to the left for a second, because I need to. This is a moment that the country is going to be taking a breath on, no matter what. We were holding our breath to see when it was happening. And when it came around 5 o'clock, we were able to get some relief, especially in our community. From the beginning, because I've been on the radio, I've been on TV, and including Al Jazeera and a few other places, speaking about the George Floyd trial, or the trial of Derek Chauvin. And I think the title of it really spoke to what people thought about this. It was the George Floyd trial. It wasn't the Derek Chauvin trial. It was the George Floyd trial. So what we're understanding is, going into this, that it's emotionally impactful. It's not just the facts, it's the emotion that's going into this case that's really going to overturn it or turn it in our favor. And what we see in the Black community a lot of times is that, one, we never get the arrest. Two, we never get the trial. And then when we do get the trial, it's typically not guilty.
Not guilty.
And then even if we do get it guilty, the sentencing is typically the problem. Now, on many other shows, what I said was, I think that the evidence is overwhelming enough for it to be a guilty trial in 2020, specifically because this trial in particular, this case in particular, the name George Floyd will be above any other name, above an Eric Gardner, above a Trayvon Martin, because it set off a worldwide outpouring of emotion, not a riot, because a lot of people were not just tearing things up, but was an outpouring of saying enough is enough, which is why the judge pushed this quickly. He didn't set this off for years. Like here in South Florida, we have a case, the Parkland shooting that happened in 2018, and Nicholas Cruz has not been to trial yet, even though we know he was the person who committed the crime. Reason being is because there are legal nuances, and they may be doing change of venues and things like that. In the George Floyd trial, there is no change of venue. I don't care if you live in Timbuktu. you know about the George Floyd trial. You know about what happened because it set off that
the entire world,
visceral emotional reaction from
Yep.
the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
So they pushed it forward. They didn't change venue. And it was kind of set up for, look, we know what happened. Let's get through this. Let's get to the next stage. Where the rubber meets the road in this case in particular is sentencing. I've always said it, and I'll say it on these airs as well. It is sentencing. Without the appropriate sentence, I think it's all going to be for naught. And I'm going to take up one more second of your time because I could talk crazy long. You got to think about the amount of time that these charges carry. You got one charge that's 40, one charge that's 25, and one charge that's 10. So let's do the math real quick. You got 40 and you got 25, that's 65. And then you got 10, that's 75 years. If you run those concurrently, not consecutively, concurrently, then you have 75 years that he could do. He can't do life, but he could do 75. Or the judge can say, hey, all of them equal up to, or all of them have their own, but we can do anything with in between. He can max out on 10, go 10, 10, 10, and do it consecutively, concurrently. And that's some of the legal nuance as well. So this guy could do 10 years. He could do 5 years and nobody even knows. Or he could do 75 years.
Right. Okay. Malik?
Yeah, so I was doing show prep, watching CNN, trying to have with BBC on my phone. I always knew this case was going to end up in a conviction. To the points that David mentioned, there was a wave that was just present. The way things lined up, you saw very clearly that there was more than enough evidence to create this scenario. The challenge that I feel still exists and even existed in this case is that African Americans, the Black people, needed not only the stars to line up perfectly, but we needed a worldwide wave of support to get one conviction. That is really a telltale thing for Black America, and actually it should be a wake-up call. It should be a clarion call to us. I love your shirt. I'm so glad I'm Black, right? But there's a lot that comes with that Blackness that we still have not yet dealt with internally. Some of that is our economic power, right? Some of this political pressure that we want to put to create the change that we need, it comes with money. I don't care what march we get on, what rally we drive home. When we don't have the money to put the right people in office and hold them accountable, you end up with Black robes that turn into executioners for our people and those that let others out the back door. Fortunately, in this case, we did have a conviction, but right in the middle of that, we turned right around less than an hour or two later, and we were talking about Ma'Khia Bryant.
Yeah,
and this young lady was also attacked by a police officer.
So there's nuance to that story. The details are still coming out. More footage was just released actually about 30 minutes before we got on air. She had a knife in her hand. There's a little bit of a different space here. She had a young woman up on the car, and she was in a posture that could be presumed that she was going to stab this young girl. So there's nuance there. But then you look at footage where you have white men in Florida walking around with a rifle, and officers walk around the car with him 52 times before they bring him down with multiple tasers, right? And so we'll see how all those details play out. But what we do know is that as Black people, we have had the unfortunate reality of having to sit and pray and get in our churches and hope. And we have testimony service and prayer service and candlelight vigils, hoping that we get a verdict. When we look at other races, they're like, it's going to happen. Not only are we going to get the verdict.
And you're going back to the economic empowerment of how these things play out in our society.
You have to. You have to, because so let's talk about where our wealth gap comes from. It's not because we make bad choices financially, it's because of systemic racism that exists in the space. So we're not even able to play at the levels that other races are able to play in terms of securing their justice. Money, wealth protects itself. And so we have to build barriers. David said he ran for office. The first thing that I would say is, how many of us knew about his race? How many of us had the opportunity to donate to him,
support,
to ensure that he got where he needed to be, that he was insulated from the politics that he was going into change? Until we're able to do that, we'll send our superheroes in with the cape, but not with enough power.
So I know that there's a disconnect in the Black community when it comes to why you should support political campaigns, why you should personally invest in them. And I don't know, I just think it's a very hard upward battle of getting people who are not pretty much like-minded already to understand that concept. So like, how do we even engage more of our community to know that they got to put their dollar behind people that we need in office to represent us?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, if you can buy a bottle in the club, or you can buy Louboutins, or you can buy Vans, or you can, you can't put $20 behind David to make sure that you have the right kind of AG in, because the difference is you can have those Louboutins, right? And you can pay for them and you look good on South Beach or wherever you wear them to. But if you have a son, know that your choice to buy those Louboutins instead of getting the right AG in means the difference between, your son going to jail in a scenario where he shouldn't have, or his killer being let off. And now you're wearing those Louboutins to his funeral. We saw that with George Floyd.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a huge disconnect. And that disconnect also comes with lack of trust in the political system and in our representatives. And it's just so many nuances to the situation in order to move us forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's education, but not only education, but as you said, Malik, putting your money where your mouth is in everything. You want to be fly, you put your money where your mouth is. You want to go to college, you put your money where your mouth is. You want to get to work, you put gas in your car, you put money where your mouth is. So it does take money to empower or power a political campaign. As one of my mentors says, money is the mother's milk of any campaign. But it's not just for a position at like the state attorney, where in Broward we'd represent over 2 million people. In Miami with Catherine Rundle, she represents over 4 million people. And you have to understand what that touches. That touches family law. That touches, in some ways, personal injury. Sometimes that touches domestic violence. You driving your car in the state of Florida, unlike some other states, driving on a suspended license or driving without a license, that's a state crime, or it's not an ordinance. It's not something that's dealt with in the city. And we have to understand that moving forward. It's not just the president. It's not just your mayor. It's your local commissioner. Unfortunately, here in South Florida, we lost a champion, Alcee Hastings, who fought for Black folks all the way from Homestead up to Palm Beach. So we lost him. We have people running for that position. As of right now, everybody's Black running for the position, but it's not just the color of your skin. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. Teresa Mallory says that all the time. All skin folk ain't kinfolk. But you need to have people who are going to be on your side to push things forward, to have the political will to do it. Because once you're in office, are you someone who's going to be pushed by the people in power, the mores and powers that be? Or are you going to buck the system and ensure that things get done to push your community? And I'm not just talking about Black folks, but the entire community forward. Because as we rise, the rest of our community rises. Even when we were enslaved, the slave master gave their children to the Black woman to help raise their children. So as they rose, it was Black folks that pushed them forward, no matter what. So I completely agree that you got to put your money where your mouth is, but also on the business side. We have to back businesses in our community so that we have that fuel to be able to do it. Here in South Florida, we have, I believe it's One Union, or which is the Black bank down here. I need to get an account. I keep talking about it.
Yeah, is it in like Miami Gardens?
It is in Garden. Yeah,
okay.
It's One Union.
Yeah.
And I got the app, and I called him the other day. I was like, man, I'm going to open up a account for my son. He turns 1 on the 29th of April. And I want to open his first bank account at One Union for him to put money. I'm gonna put $1,000 in. He's gonna be 1 year old with $1,000 in his pocket.
That's awesome. You bring up a lot of valid points, but one that stuck out to me is the fact that I think a lot of pressure when there are elected officials in office who are Black, a lot of the pressure I think comes from them having to really just, I guess, what's the word that I'm looking for? The people who are backing their campaign and the ones who actually invest in them are the interests that they, I guess, kind of are, they have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it makes it difficult for everybody. It makes it difficult for the community, but also for that elected official, because the community might not see this particular elected official doing enough, but they're playing the game of politics and having to make sure that whoever is funding their campaign, their interests are being met as well. And so it's a lot of like slippery slope when it comes to that. I know Malik has a lot to add on that.
I mean, look, politics is transactional, it's business. We make it personal, right? So we want the elected official to come out and do the block party and pay for, Run DMC to come to our block or whatever other little thing we have, and the book bags and the haircuts. And that's cool. But if you're not raising the economic tide of our community, then what's the point? You're really just doing handouts. You might as well be, LL and In Too Deep and playing that role of God, giving out turkeys, right? And that's our challenge.
LL, Run DMC.
I'm in a hip hop moment.
I'm always in my hip hop bag. I love it.
So here's the thing: we make it more personal and emotional. We get very, and I'll use another, we get very Carl Thomas and get super emotional with our stuff, right? Like, so we want our elected official to come to love on us. And yeah, like we want them to hug on us and sing to us and get up there. And we know the slangs, politician gets up there and it goes, God is good. And we go all the time. All that stuff is emotional. It has absolutely
I never looked at it that way.
With my bottom line. Absolutely nothing to do with it, right? When you're an elected official, you have a business card. You represent that entity, that seal on your business card. You're the business agent for that entity, right? So I need my city council person to represent the city. And when I want to do business with the city, you represent me properly. That's what I hired you to do. Instead, we have it in reverse where it's like, you're doing me a favor if you show up on the scene. And so when we bring that into criminal justice, when you bring it into political will, I'll tell you, Obama, first and foremost, we got to get out the habit of thinking that we have to donate $3,000 or we got to max out to a political candidate to make a difference. Obama went into office with $600 million of donations at $5 and less.
Yeah. And I was one of those people.
$600 million at $5.
I mean, I gave him more than $5.
I had sweat equity.
Come on, right? And see, but see, that's the thing. Like, so we got excited and so now let's take him, for example. We got excited when he got in with our $600 million, but then we stopped.
Yeah.
It was a midterm. There were Congress folk and senators that we needed to either check and get them out or support, right? And so now you have this superstar president now in tight positions in the midterms, fighting for re-election. And so now trickle that down to Eric Holder. Eric Holder comes in as a DOJ and makes recommendations. But if you don't have enough money to force teeth onto those local entities, all his recommendations mean absolutely nothing at the end of the day. Now we're getting ready to have another DOJ investigation into, the current police department. It's the same thing that we saw with Eric Holder. The question becomes, do we have enough consequence? Because power doesn't concede to anything without demand. It's consequence that makes power move. So do we have enough consequence to make those DOJ recommendations become reality?
So when I was running for office, and even still now, I believe that the criminal justice system really affects and permeates every portion of our society. You got to think about it. We're dealing with mental health. We're dealing with, again, relationships. So domestic violence, you're dealing with children, you're dealing with sexual abuse, you're dealing with incarceration, you're dealing with finances, poor, driving, everything. All of these things are happening in the criminal justice system. So being able to fix or restructure the criminal justice system, I think, is extremely important. And look, there's a lot of folks, especially Black folks out there, who believe that we need to abolish the criminal justice system. I remember during the campaign, we had somebody.
That was a big topic during our campaign.
Huge. And let me say something that Jeter didn't say. We met on the campaign, but she was the campaign manager for my campaign too. And she did an excellent job. So I'm gonna thank you live on air. Thank you for doing such a good job.
Thank you. Thank you. I learned from my campaign manager, big homie Malik Boyd. Shout out.
Jeter cut her teeth in the Philly streets. So.
And those Philly streets are tough too. And before I even ran, I was able to meet with the DA up there. And I worked with a lot of folks in Philly to understand.
Worked on that campaign too.
Understand the type of change that was going on. But while you're in it, when people are talking about abolishing the criminal justice or abolishing really the criminal justice of the prosecutor, law enforcement, everything, what you're saying is we don't need you anymore. And that's not true. We do need the criminal justice system to help us. The problem is we need it to not be biased against us. The reason why Black folks are against the criminal justice system a lot of times in our communities is that it's been used as a sword and not a shield to harm us rather than protect us. And the George Floyd trial was seen as a step in the right direction to craft the mold of the shield to be able to protect Black and brown folks in our community moving forward. And that's what we need political leaders in our system to be able to do, is not harm us, but protect us. Protect us from the rise of white nationalism, white supremacy. Protect us from neo-Nazis coming out. Protect us from anti-immigrant sentiments. Protect us from xenophobia, the fear of the other, the fear of Asian folks in this community, the fear of Muslims, the violence against Muslim rise during 9/11, the Iraq and Afghanistan war, the violence currently in South Florida, in particular. Broward County has the largest population of Asian folks in the state of Florida. Violence against Asians in Broward County has risen since coronavirus hit, and especially after the attack in Atlanta, because it emboldened more people. Violence against Black folks rose during and post George Floyd. You literally saw it on TV. Black folks not only being harassed by police officers, but common folks who felt emboldened. What happened on January 6th in the Capitol never has happened before in our nation's history. Even when we were fighting against ourselves and we had civil war, nobody in the South even did that. Black people didn't uprise and kick in the door of the Capitol or the White House. But folks that felt that their God-given American right of being white or having something taken from them was harming them, and they kicked in the front door of the Capitol, and they were literally going to kill people. AOC came out and said that someone was in her office and said, "Where is AOC?
Wow,
I'm going to kill her."
Wow.
You know, what you said is so important. I think, you know, Jeter, if we could tattoo this on every individual who fails to show up to vote. You know, when we talk about the criminal justice system, if you don't invest in your justice, you will get treated criminally. That's just how it works.
That's a bar.
It is really just how it works. And we don't invest in our justice. So when you talk to the actual voters, most of our voters who just pay attention to what a ward leader or a committee person is going to say, they just vote down ballot, or they just pay attention to broad party lines.
Yeah.
When you look at their donations are most of the time non-existent to the candidate and or to the issue at hand. As a result, here's the sleight of hand that occurs. Big interests or special interests, as you talked about, Jeter, will bring in the candidate and tell our community that's the one. And they'll hire all the brown faces you need to make you feel like that person is for your community and your interests. Here's the thing, that person will walk through your church. They will sing Amazing Grace, No Not One, and Nothing But the Blood, just like everybody else in your church.
Silver and gold.
Silver and gold, right? I'd rather have Jesus, right? But then they get into the office and they go talk to the oil tycoon. They go
Right.
talk to the fracker. They go talk to big business. They go international
Big
because
real estate, big
those
construction.
individuals were the ones doing the marionette. Like, so the
Malik,
strings are attached to
let
them.
me jump in for a second, because this was something that was brought up on the campaign as well, because we even had to fill out a questionnaire that was talking about, will you take money from so-and-so? Will you take money from the unions? Will you take money from developers? And look, all money ain't good money. We know that, right? But money has, the people that give the money do have intentions behind it. If I always said in the campaign, I'm willing to take money from people who have integrity. I remember, man, I can't think of his name right now. I'm going to think of it in a minute, but he came on he owns the Griot and the Weather Channel.
Byron Allen?
Byron Allen. I knew it started with a B. Byron Allen. Byron Allen came on the Breakfast Club, and he said he was a huge supporter of the Obama campaign. And when he was invited to the White House, he sat next to Michael Eric Dyson and Barack Obama and told him exactly what he wanted. He said, I donated to you because I wanted you to be in position, because I wanted you to win the race. But it's not illegal, and it's my American duty, not only as a person that donated to you, but my duty as a citizen to ask you for something. Politicians are in position for you to do something for them. So you ask them to do something. They'll listen to you when you give them more money, right, or when you have access to something, but you can ask them for something. They ain't got to do it. And what Byron Allen said was, Obama never did what I asked him for, but my donation to his campaign wasn't contingent on him doing something.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is that he had integrity in what he was doing. He had integrity in giving his money to the campaign. And he also had integrity in the will to say, I want you to do something for me. And during his campaign, Obama, at least he felt he wasn't able to do it, or he tried to do it and it didn't work out, whatever it was. But we need to have that understanding of politics. We got to play the game how the game is. We can't always try to shape the game and completely mold it to what we want. It is what it is. We make it work for us. And then once we're in the system, we endeavor to change the system, which is why I became a prosecutor, which is important because most of my colleagues weren't prosecutors. 250 attorneys at the state attorney's office, 8 were Black male. The majority of people in those seats are Black male. So you're telling me that we are equally represented? Absolutely not. Only 15 at the time were Black female. So out of 250 attorneys, less than 30 of them were Black, period, end of story. And unfortunately, as we see as being transplants down here, we know that Hispanic folks around the country are treated as immigrants, are treated as less than treated as Black folks in many respects. But down here, Cuban folks a lot of times believe that they are white and they are not in the struggle like all of us. Unfortunately, when they step out of South Florida, they get a rude awakening. And that's the other part as well, that when they come for your neighbor, it won't be long until they come for you, because then they don't have anyone else to oppress if to push too far down on the person that they originally came from.
You know,
wow, you guys are bringing a lot of like really dope points to the conversation. I almost feel like we have to have like a part 2, because I see where the passion lies, and it's definitely with getting the right people elected into office and having our representatives. And I always think that conversation has to be one that continues, but it has to touch the grassroots level and have a plain conversation for those who are not always politically connected or even care about politics. Like, we have to be able to give it to them in a way that makes sense for them, you know, which is why, like, when you have the hip hop artists come out, Vote or Die, things like that, those things are extremely important. And they always tend to bring a really good response, you know, from the community, because that's what they're paying attention to. But I have so many other questions in regards to this guilty verdict for you all. So this question is for Malik. All over social media, there are memes talking about how the verdict of guilty is accountability and not justice. But we were chanting and we were posting and we were saying we want justice. And now it's like some people are like, oh, that wasn't justice, it's accountability. Can you just break that down for us?
Sure. So that meme is not far-fetched at all. Okay. So justice would have been the other officers pulling Derek off of George, saying you've gone too far, and having him written up, with George Floyd still alive with his child today, right? That would be justice. And so a conviction, and this is, I'm really about to get in trouble on this. Y'all pray my strength in the Lord on this one. So here's the challenge. We treated what was really a clear conviction, right? This was supposed to happen. I mean, come on, 9 minutes and 26 seconds or 23 seconds on the neck with the knee. This was kind of just a closed door case. Here's a challenge. We were so happy. We did press conferences. We're releasing balloons. I mean, people are I saw praise dancers in the street. I mean, everybody was going all out, because we get excited and misapply words like justice to something that's a normal, that should have happened, right? And so life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. We have many Americans who are enjoying the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
Black people are still focused on just getting life, being able to enjoy life, not even the liberty part. We didn't really explore the liberty part. And David touched on some of those parts of the liberty. We're still on the life part. And so learning what justice truly is going to be equally as important. And having individuals like David. Shout out to guys like Randall Woodfin, mayor in Birmingham. You remember Jeter? We flew him up to raise money for Randall. He's now mayor, a guy who's now saying, look, we just took 15,000 convictions off the books for marijuana charges. We know most of them were Black folk in Birmingham.
Absolutely.
Individuals helping us to redefine what justice really is. That's what's going to matter. I think that's what that meme was about. And at the very least, if people didn't understand it, it sparked a lot of conversation.
Well, I definitely want to give a shout out to DJ Benhop for having us on, man. I've been doing it for years. Before we even got on, he had a conversation about pirate radio and independent radio here in South Florida, and Jeter as well. This conversation is amazing. And Malik is right about his perspective on justice. The greatest conversation in the courthouse, any courthouse, I guarantee you, is what is justice. Many prosecutors who become defense attorneys say, I've never seen justice in my life. Many defense attorneys who have always been defense attorneys say, I've been searching for justice the whole time.
Wow.
And that's important, because this nebulous term is what the whole system is built on. Indeed. It's what politics is built on. It's what our civil system is built on, but it's civil justice versus criminal justice. And it's based on what our criminal system is built on. The equity between individuals, how we are not only treating our neighbor, but how in the future our children will be treated, and what we do. Literally, that word has so much power in it, and it's misused all the time.
So what's next? I know we talked about the need for supporting political candidates who will rightfully represent our Black issues and the Black community. But I know you talked about we can't defund the police. Okay, we're not going to defund the police, but what do we need? More Black police officers? Do we need more, criminal justice professionals? Like, do we need Black lawyers? Where do we fill in these gaps?
It's a lot there. It's a lot there. I mean,
question.
Yeah, I mean that one you got to unpack in the series. You got to do 3 Bible studies and a revival.
But Bible studies and a rap song,
right? But here's the thing, and Dave brought up such an amazing point. Lady Justice, when you look at her, she has a blinder over her eyes. Okay, some would argue that that's to represent that she does not see color. She doesn't, that she's going to be essentially impartial. But if Lady Justice is blind, that also means she can't see herself either.
Wow.
Which is why so many have been around her, but she doesn't know who she is.
Yeah.
And so if Lady Justice can't see to guide herself, it's going to be clear that we're going to need to guide her. The way you guide her is with those resources, with that money at the table, understanding what judges you need to put in office.
Mm-hmm.
Stop allowing ward leaders to tell you what, folk need retention and who we're going to put in just because they came around for the barbecue. No, go up to that candidate and say, how do you feel on this issue? How would you have taken a look at call them to the carpet. But the other piece that you have, Danielle, that's so important. Women run this thing. And as a grown man, I have zero problem saying our
100%.
women have single-handedly resewn the fabric after it has been ripped so many times by injustice. And so if Black men are wise and men of color are wise, we are going to get around, the network of women that you've put together, Danielle. We're going to make sure that we have women in office that will care about making sure that Black men also get in and have a voice. It's going to be a teamwork thing. This can't be a gender war in the Black community. We now have
100%.
to partner and really say, you know what, Dave has to go here, Danielle's going to go here, this person is going to go here. Literally create a seamless network. Atlanta proved it. We saw that, right? They had a mayor that said, look, if we don't have equity here, these planes are going to land on dirt. As a result, we have the Herman J. Russell Company. We have all these Black millionaires in play. It's doable. The question is, do we have the will before we talk about political will?
Right. The blueprint is there, as you just said. And I swear you two gentlemen probably saw my notes on this on our episode today, because for sure I'm going into women in politics, and I just think that's really interesting that, David, you also brought up the point about the verdict. I didn't even have to ask you about the verdict and the sentencing because you just went right to it. But, what I really want to hear both of you comment on is the controversy about the legitimacy around the Black Lives Matter movement and that organization. So there's a lot of talk coming out saying that the organization is not providing resources back to the community and the movement, and they're getting the donations, but they're not doing too much. I personally have not really looked into it. I just see a lot of the commentary coming out, but what do you guys know?
I'll touch on it for a second, because this one actually hits home for both Jeter and I. We had a huge debate with our team during the campaign when Black Lives Matter reemerged as a powerhouse. How do we use this movement to our benefit? Because you want to use movements to your benefit, all right? I'm not going to lie, like crises help push things and messages forward, but also how heavy do we go into it? Jeter was like, yo, you better throw in your Black Lives Matter t-shirt and get out there. I was like, I got a baby and my wife will kill me if I'm in these streets during coronavirus. But also it was a balance, because we understood that these are serious things that are happening. We can't push it to the side. It's everything that these society is doing, or I think a lot of people moving the puzzle pieces around are doing to debase the movement and say that it's no longer pushing for Black issues. It's now pushing for LGBTQ issues. A lot of folks are saying that it's no longer doing what it's meant to do. This is something that Black people have been great at. I'm gonna tell you what Black people are great at. They're great at inclusivity, not exclusivity. Unfortunately, the majority class has been great at exclusivity, but we bring people in. But once that will of giving and love really gets into it, then it allows people to say, well, this no longer is benefiting the purpose in which it was meant for. So I think that Black folks, the Black Lives Matter is now a nebulous term that people are using to define whatever they want to define. But to your point, Malik, if we're still fighting to say that my life even matters, we're literally fighting over whose life matters instead of saying all my life matters, your life matters. But in this situation, Black lives matter. And let's not bring up all lives matter, because Black lives are at issue right now. When your life is being debased and you are terrified of the police behind you. The police pulled me over 2 weeks ago. I was terrified. I'm telling you right now, I'm a former prosecutor. I deal with police officers all the time, and I was. But Malik, I think I definitely want to hear your perspective on this too, man.
So, I'm gonna get in trouble again, but it's a shame to have so many superheroes walking around searching to find one superhero to lead. It's like we are a league of superheroes. You can go into the community and find those who are leading the charge every day. Black Lives Matter, long before an org got put together, a 501c3 or a C4, long before the NBA painted it on the court, long before it got painted on the streets of DC or any other municipality. We know that Black Lives Matter. We were calling ourselves kings and queens the last 3 summers before that. Now, all of a sudden, we need an education on Black lives and we need a representative to remind folk. And I'm not knocking the organization. I don't know the details of, how things got spent or anything like that. What I will say is we get suckered into the organizational bait and switch. Mm-hmm. And so we allow a movement to get co-opted by this corporate presence or corporate involvement. And we go, oh, well, the NFL has this now, and they donated 90 million here, and the NBA says this, and oh, look, there's 3 more Black people on the soccer team this year. And we start celebrating these things that still are very symbolic in nature. And we've got to get out of the symbolism and get into the substance. Because I don't care if you wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. What I care about is when you go to your job as that C-suite person, when you go put that black robe on as a common pleas court or municipal judge, when you throw that badge on and that 45 or that Glock and you get into that patrol car, will Black Lives Matter then? I don't need your t-shirt to change. I need your heart to change.
Give me 15 seconds. I definitely want to
I got comment. 10 for you.
You got, all right, she got 10 for me. I appreciate that. That's the campaign manager talking right there. No, you're absolutely correct saying that it's not just a t-shirt. We need to see your action. But I will say that the symbolism does help put the message forward. Having your first Black president, even though he doesn't do everything that you want him to do, allows for us to have the conversation about what's next. Saying Black Lives Matter allows us to have that next conversation as well. So yeah, the t-shirt, I don't need you to just put on a t-shirt and a hashtag and do something on your stories. We need you to have the substance behind it. So I'm with you.
But now let me say this to you. So we had the Black president, right? 44 came in, brother was sharp, dapper. We had an amazing first lady, right? Who ran the shop for sure.
Absolutely.
And while we celebrated him for 8 years, our median income dropped even further.
100%.
We went further into the minorities. Brookings Institute says by 2040, we will have $5.46 as our median wealth income. My God. I'm like, the only symbol I want to see is more greenbacks in my pocket so I can get them behind David and get him to the AG office or wherever we need to get our folks.
I appreciate that. I'll take all your money.
No, I mean, it's serious. I don't, it's because until we understand the game, it's almost like that 3-card Monty, right? On the boardwalk. We're following it, and it was already set up from the beginning. We're going to get played.
I want to end the show, Women in Media show, talking about women in politics. So there are 142 women serving in the U.S. Congress right now. So that's about 34% of them are women of color, 49 women out of the 142. I personally believe that there's a great opportunity for more women, specifically Black women, to get involved in our criminal justice system, politics, elected officials, and really taking up space in these roles. Having you two, Malik, David, drop a word of encouragement, inspiration, talk about the opportunities that are available for women. Every time I'm talking about public relations, I talk to other publicists and I say, I do political PR and it's great opportunities in that space. I think you should consider jumping in.
I'm gonna give you 60 seconds on this because I know that we're running. I think that I'm going to piggyback on Malik said. Black women are the backbone of this community. Women are the backbone of this entire nation, and they need to be supported in anything that they do. And I think with uplifting them, we uplift ourselves. I think that we need to get involved in the criminal justice system. In particular, we have great women like Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore, who's the state attorney up there. You have the prosecutor in PG County, Maryland, Aisha Braveboy, who's a Black woman, Kim Fox in Chicago, who's a Black woman. We have the ability to do it. We need to support them. Congress and the legislature and county commissions are one part of it, but prosecutors and other executives who are able to make substantive change without having a big group mindset behind it will also push the needle forward as well. So there's opportunity out there, as we were talking about, but we also need to support the ones in office, and then also get the right ones, women and men in office, who are able to push, which is why I love what Women in Media is doing. So thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, David.
So to piggyback on that, we celebrate Stacey Abrams, but many don't know the Amy Stills in North Carolina, who's putting together $60 million operation to create the blue wave there. And so it's not just the king, or the queen, but it's the queen maker. Right. And so I would encourage those who are listening right now and those who will listen in the future to understand that you don't have to be the elected individual in order to move the dial. We need the folk who will organize. We need the folk who will do the fundraising. We need the folk who will become the gatekeepers to keep the special interests off of our selected candidates so that they can finish the job. It's just like football. When we're going to do that 43 dive and that running back is going to, take the ball and tuck and run through the hole, somebody has to block.
Yeah.
Somebody has to run a decoy route, and so let's make sure that we're managing all aspects, not just getting into one perspective.
Exactly. Both of you, Malik, David, brought it home perfectly. And I hope that this encouraged you to even consider how you can get involved in your local elections and even on a national level if you want to explore. But there's plenty of opportunity out there. I encourage you to go forth and do it. I love working behind the scenes on political campaigns. I put my heart into it. And I'm going to continue to make sure that I'm in that space taken up, and also bringing you along with me. This is Women in Media, WIM Speaks Radio on excitementradio.com. It's been a pleasure to have you two gentlemen here with me, Malik Boyd, David Cannady from Florida, Malik in Philadelphia. This is Women in Media, and we have spoken.